When I was a kid, I played a lot of video games. Some of my favorite games were Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, Plants vs. Zombies, a lot of Pokemon. Hell, I even played Metal Gear Solid 3 on the PS2 with my brother. Granted, when I was a kid, I wasn't very good at video games. It took me time to really grasp concepts like timing and spatial awareness inside video games. I wasn't the best, and being a moody little kid definitely didn't help that either. My siblings would beat me in games like Mario Kart or Smash Bros. Brawl on the Wii, and I would go apeshit, shut the console off, and be so upset that the almighty little Gamma lost. What a little wuss, huh? I didn't like losing. I don't really think anybody does, but I think that sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes we need to learn things the hard way to really improve. Honestly, the best part about losing is learning new things. Usually you find new ways to push yourself forward so that you can take on any challenge that comes your way, or you can just do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. So, have you ever been playing a video game and suddenly you're met with this? Or what about this? Well, my friend, these are called failure states. Or, in simple terms, fuck-ups. A failure state happens when you mess up, whether that's dying, failing, and the game forces you to go back. The point is to punish mistakes just enough that you learn something, and hopefully don't make the same mistake again. Look at a game like Celeste. You die a lot in this game. That's kind of the whole deal with Celeste. It's the type of game where you're expected to die a lot, so that you can experiment and try new approaches to each situation. When you die, you just kind of explode, and then are sent back to the start of the room you're in. Not much of a huge punishment. You can just try again, right? And again, and again, and again. Celeste's game design revolves around this. Your mistakes teach you how to approach even the smallest of jumps by failing them over and over and over and over again. This may seem repetitive, but it's really satisfying when you get to the point where you can blast through some of these rooms only because you have failed so many times. Celeste proves that skill isn't something you start with, it's something you earn by falling short over and over again. Lots of games implement a similar system to Celeste. Cuphead, for example, one of the best games of all time, by the way, will cause you to restart the boss. But what makes this stand out as a failure state is because Cuphead literally has the boss mocking you after you die. Almost a LMAO you suck message directly to the player's face. Like Celeste, every mistake resets you. In Celeste, it's just the room. In Cuphead, it's the entire boss fight. But since those fights only last a few minutes at best, it doesn't really feel too punishing. In my opinion, I think the real punishment comes from seeing just how close you were to beating the boss and how many attempts it will take you to get back to that point again. At this point, you have two choices: get better or give up. This can become dangerous from a game design standpoint, as many players could get discouraged and shut off the game in frustration. I personally find this hilarious, and I'm sure anyone else with a sense of humor would as well. But it's also very motivating. Don't get me wrong, I totally think it's fair if a boss beats you, then hits you with a skill issue. Sounds like you got some work to do. And retrying a 3-minute boss isn't gonna kill you. Cuphead is one of those games that doesn't really feel unfair in most cases. Almost everything the boss can throw at you feels satisfying to overcome and fair to boot. In the first few years after Cuphead was released, the game was brutal to me. It took me forever to actually beat the game, and now after years of playing and plenty of practice, I can beat Cuphead relatively quickly with no issues. Well, minimal issues. Man, fuck that stupid gene. But what happens when a game doesn't encourage learning through failure? I love playing Minecraft. I've been playing for years, ever since the game first came out. I've probably played every single version of Minecraft, excluding the Wii U version. It's a classic. I would say I love Minecraft with all my heart, and in my opinion, the way Minecraft handles failure states is perfect. When you die, you drop all of your items and lose your experience points. But fear not, your gear, and a small fraction of EXP, will still be waiting for you at the spot where you died. The catch? You only have 7 minutes to get back there before the game despawns everything. This creates tension for the player. The shock of dying is immediately met with the panic of potentially losing all of your stuff. Your mistakes aren't permanent, but can be a huge setback if you're not fast enough or died too far away. And if you died in the nether, then you can kiss your loot goodbye. Minecraft's punishment system is a great way of teaching the player that taking risks or being stupid would lead to direct consequences. Even if you're a new player learning the game, it's a very clear indicator that maybe you did something wrong. Granted, not all situations seem fair. As frustrating as this might sound, I think 99% of the time it's up to the player to make the right decisions to avoid dying. Like some risk-reward type shit, you know what I mean? If you want to possibly get the reward, then you need to understand that there are risks involved. Minecraft also has this little tiny option called Keep Inventory. Basically, when you die, you don't lose anything. Sounds great, right? No more wasting time running back to recover your gear. Sure, if you don't want to play with any risks, that's fine. But here's the thing. A game with no risks is boring and unmotivating. Sure, it can be relaxing to not have to worry about anything. It is a game, after all, meant to be fun. But playing like that doesn't encourage any growth. It kills the tension that makes gaming exciting. Let me show you what I mean. You're standing at the edge of a giant pit. At the bottom, diamonds. But do you jump? Or do you find a safer way down? Wait a minute. I remember a situation like this before. Oh, hey, look, diamonds. I can use this waterfall to get down safely and grab them. And then suddenly, you remember you saw some water before. And build a quick elevator using your trusty iron bucket. Congratulations! You just used basic problem solving to avoid losing everything. That tension, the risk of failure, is what forces you to think smarter. Now let's rewind. Same pit, same diamonds, but this time, Keep Inventory is on, and you can tell it's been on for a while. Hey look, I see some diamonds down in that pit. But how can I get them? Well, that's kind of annoying. I guess I can't get down there. Whatever, I'll come back later. As you saw, our little Minecraft gamer couldn't even be bothered to find a way down. They've been cruising through the whole game without a single care in the world, taking their inventory for granted and missing out on what they could have achieved if they just took a risk. And that right there is the problem. With no risk, you don't learn, you don't grow. And that makes it hard to really care about what you have. Sure, you may have earned it, but if there's no risk of losing it, it stops feeling meaningful. Without having to worry about losing his inventory or items, he became complacent. But in the first scenario, when he actually took in his surroundings and used what he had at his disposal, it sparked creativity, which led to his clever solution for getting the diamonds. There was a very real risk involved. He could have fallen and lost everything, and because of that risk, he got creative. Granted, this is a very highly exaggerated scenario. The average Minecraft player would have just dug their way down. For the sake of the video, let's ignore that. Look, play however you want. Hell, I mean, you could even play Dark Souls 3 with a DDR pad for all I care. That's the beauty of games. But I think risk is what makes them fun. And I think that it is valuable for anyone, regardless of background, to challenge themselves through risky behavior in games. Look at Dark Souls, for example. This game has a very beloved fan base, while also being hated by a very passionate people online that think the Souls series doesn't do a very good job of teaching players through failure. I feel like the opposite is true. Dark Souls is a hard game. It punishes you for making mistakes and rewards you for getting stronger and taking the time to explore and learn the game. Finding new gear after venturing through a scary and new area is the fucking best. Dominating a boss after multiple different attempts is something that you won't find as satisfying in any other game. Dark Souls has a great way of showing the player that taking risks can lead to great results, albeit with a huge amount of risk involved. It's not a forgiving game, and it will frequently remind you of that. Dark Souls has 3 ways it punishes you for failure. When you die once, you drop all of your souls in the spot that you died. Souls are basically currency and EXP combined into one, so they're quite the valuable resource, even though you get them through killing enemies, so it's not that hard to get more. You're also forced to now walk back to wherever you died from the nearest bonfire, which is usually not very close, to get your souls back. Now here's the kicker. If you die a second time while trying to get your stuff back, then your souls are gone for good, and this can really suck. Losing thousands of souls that could have leveled you up multiple times because you died twice, that's a tough blow to take. This creates a huge amount of tension for the player. That fear of realizing that you have potentially hours of gameplay just sitting there waiting for you to pick it up is terrifying. Some would argue that this is too much for a player to handle, but I think it teaches players to think tactfully and think things through. Do you run back avoiding enemies, or do you take it slow and go from enemy to enemy until you get back? Dying in a boss room is equally as terrifying, because once you're in a boss room, you can't get out. Your souls are locked in there until you or the boss die. No exception. I won't lie. I've had my fair share of rage quits from the Souls series. Losing everything can be very disheartening. But imagine if Dark Souls had some kind of easy mode that you could turn on where you wouldn't be able to lose your souls. Kind of like Minecraft's keep inventory. You know how fucking meaningless Dark Souls would be as a series? To be able to just wing everything you do and not have to worry about the consequences? Dark Souls as a franchise wouldn't exist as it does today without that level of brutality that it is known for. It teaches you in the most brutal way possible while still being fair. Yeah, it's fair. Deal with it, punk. If you don't think it's fair, it's probably a skill issue. Dark Souls definitely has some bosses that do have some bullshit. There are ways to push yourself to either get better or upgrade your gear and level up before you challenge it again. Elden Ring kind of hammers this point home harder than the rest of the series because you can always leave a boss and come back to it later. The game literally has a boss right after the tutorial that you are not supposed to fight. It's trying to teach you that you should come back later once you leveled up and learned a thing or two. Or maybe you can just keep slamming your head against the brick wall. That might also work. Every game walks a fine line. Do you reward the player to keep them motivated or punish their mistakes to make them grow? The healthiest design lies somewhere in the middle, but gaming history is full of examples where the balance is questionable. Sonic the Hedgehog is a pretty cool game. It's basically Mario, but fast. So what happens when you die? You go back to your last checkpoint, or if you don't have one, to the start of the zone. Doesn't sound too bad, right? Well, what if I told you that when you run out of lives in the original Sonic the Hedgehog, you don't just restart the level, you get booted all the way back to the beginning of the game. No excuses, no second chances, no nothing, just straight back to the title screen. Now, does that seem very fair for your mistakes to cost you the entire game? I don't think so. Lots of older games used to do that, where if you lost all your lives, then it was time to start over again. Here's the thing, that kind of punishment wasn't very welcoming. It didn't encourage learning the way Dark Souls or Cuphead does. It just pushed you back to the start to lengthen how long you spend playing the game. And while those mechanics shaped a generation of gamers, they also locked a lot of people out. This whole system actually came from the arcade era. Games were designed to eat up quarters and keep people from hogging one machine for hours. It wasn't really about fairness, it was more about business. Back then, games weren't something you built a long-term connection with. Sure, you could fucking love Pac-Man, but there was no depth. You didn't play for the story or immersion. You played to kill time, to see how far you could get, maybe have some fun, and then move on. That deeper sense of attachment to a game world didn't really start until home consoles became common, when suddenly your progress actually mattered. It made sense when it was something that was used for arcades, but for home consoles? Not really. It fizzled out relatively quickly, considering only a handful of games were like this. Notable examples would be games like the original Mario Brothers and Battletoads for the NES, Contra 3 for the SNES, and Ghouls and Ghosts for the Sega Genesis. When you got a game over, you were sent back to the start. Fun fact, Rogue on PC actually took this restart from scratch idea and ran with it. It was the first roguelike, built around short runs where death resets everything. It's not super relevant here, but I thought it was cool. That punishment ended up inspiring an entire genre. Anyways, back to the main point. Thankfully, being sent back to the very start of a game because of a small fuck-up didn't become the status quo. As gaming became more mainstream, developers began designing with wider audiences in mind, making games more welcoming instead of catering only to the hardcore. Some games became easier, but others found smarter ways to encourage growth through failure. Dark Souls and Cuphead, for example, punished mistakes without shutting players out entirely, turning failure into a tool for learning rather than just a dead end. You're not slamming your head against a wall only to be sent back to the title screen. And it's not like these games grab your hand and guide you through every step. There are difficulty challenges that truly dedicated to push forward, adapt, and ultimately overcome whatever obstacles the game throws their way. Some newer games even implement permadeath mechanics for those who are looking for the extra challenge. Modern games still experiment with permadeath in a lot of different ways. Minecraft has a hardcore mode where dying deletes your world permanently. The Last of Us Part 2 includes optional permadeath settings, ranging from restarting just an area to restarting the entire game. Baldur's Gate 3 has honor mode, where if your party is wiped out, say bye-bye to your save. Thankfully, party members weren't permanently dead when they died in Baldur's Gate 3. That immediately makes me think of Fire Emblem Three Houses. In its classic mode, when a unit falls in battle, they're gone for good. You do have a rewind mechanic that can bring them back, but on harder difficulties, this mechanic is limited. I have found myself in numerous situations where a long battle is about to end and I have to decide whether to sacrifice a character or just start the battle over from scratch. And some of these battles are pretty long. It's nice to see these mechanics return as optional difficulty enhancers rather than default gameplay. If permadeath was standard, gaming wouldn't be as nearly as welcoming as it is today. And honestly, these systems only feel meaningful once the player has already mastered everything there is to learn. Losing a hardcore Minecraft world or watching a Fire Emblem unit die permanently doesn't really teach you anything. It may teach a new player who wants to explore these options and try to see if they got the stuff to handle some permadeath, but it's a bit too brutal for me. I don't really like the idea of losing everything in a game, but I do find the idea of permadeath in a game like Fire Emblem, where a character that can be completely instrumental for the story just fucking dies. The kind of risk creates tension, but a little too much tension for the average gamer. Hell, that's too much for the majority of gamers. Not everyone likes to play their games like that, and that's okay, but those permadeath options are still fun for those wanting to take up that brutal challenge. So having them be optional is a great way to entice new and returning players. In the end, I think every game needs some kind of punishment in its failure state. When you mess up, you should feel it. Not to annoy you, but to push you to learn and improve. It's not just about making the game harder. It's about challenging the player in a way that encourages growth. When done right, like in Celeste or Dark Souls, failure teaches you to adapt, forces you to push yourself further than you thought you could go. But when it goes too far, like old retro resets or full permadeath, the punishment stops being a lesson and turns into a wall. Albeit a wall that is climbable and technically smashable if you want to keep bashing your head against it. The best games find ways to challenge players to learn and improve as they play. The most satisfying games for me are the ones that when I think back to how I was when I started, it's nice to see how far I've come, even after all the failure. Well, that's another video in the books, folks. I hope you enjoyed. If you're interested in seeing more Gamma B, then don't be afraid to check out my VOD channel for all my Twitch streams that have been uploaded to YouTube. I also have a Twitch channel that I'm not really using as much these days, but who knows? Maybe I'll come back to it if there's enough demand. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you agree. I don't fucking know. Give me your opinion. Let's hear it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Ciao.